Hello, everybody, and welcome to the fourth installment of the Two Existential Dudes podcast. Woohoo! I am Luke.
And I am Andrew.
Today we are going to be talking about leadership, but first I would like to,
Talking about how being childish can be often associated with being a child by definition. We want to make sure, not always, like we said a couple times, many youth can be very mature and many adults can be very immature, and it does go the other way too. It's not a one and done situation every time. It's always however you want it, or it depends on the person rather.
Yeah, and I would say generally the older you get, the more mature you get, but it is still definitely important to hold on to some of those, youthful virtues, you could say, like optimism, positivity, those things that would usually be associated with youth. Those are important to hold on to. A lot of times people who you would consider mature or they take themselves too seriously, that they lose the ability to laugh, to find things fun, to enjoy life.
Yeah, because an educated and informed person will recognize once they're older, it's like, man, the world sucks, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But someone who's, I would say, more mature recognizes, yes, it sucks, but look at all this great stuff we have that makes it so much more worthwhile. That's why children who love gold stars are just as equal to adults in their 70s who love gold stars, which I think is the best thing ever. Actually, you'd be very surprised how well gold stars work in a high school setting. It's students go crazy for those things. It's terrifying.
Well, you had the stamps. The stamps at marching band.
Yeah, our last band camp season, I gave out stamps for people who did really well, and they were a merit worth searching for. At least I hope they were.
So, do you have anything else to add? I know you said you also wanted to address some things.
For the most part, that's it. Just, again, to clarify that we're not trying to say that all adults are these immature people who just grow old and think they're mature, but they're not. And not all children are immature babies. It really is a two-way street, and it depends on every circumstance. And that's, again, why it's incredibly important to recognize your own biases and how your thoughts reflect of others and what they are going through and how they respond to the world themselves.
Okay. All right. Okay. So, with that, our topic for today is leadership. And in my notes here, I searched for the definition of leadership because I wanted a real dictionary, but I wasn't really satisfied that anything that came up, so I made my own.
Oh boy.
Ahem. Leadership. The act of providing guidance or direction to a group with the purpose of accomplishing a common goal. Your thoughts?
That is I would call that an academic definition.
Yeah, I was going for that.
Yeah, and I respect it. I definitely would agree in that it's a very, not simple, but a very straightforward, here's exactly what this means. However, with something with leadership, while I think that gets you far, the most important qualities of of how you should define leadership really come from individuals and experiencing what those people do themselves. Almost all of my notes that I prepared are in regards to what a leader should do, what a leader should be, and what a leader should think. Because yes, leadership by definition is just that act of leading another person.
Yeah.
Ideally to a better goal, but not necessarily to just a goal of some form, because leadership can come.
Well, I would say, to interject. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I would say that a goal can be very vague in this case. It could just be to get better at something. It doesn't have to be like we're gonna finish this group project by this date and get the best grade. I wouldn't say it's that. So, I guess you can continue.
Because leadership can be anything from high school students just hating each other and one person be like, all right, here's what we're going to do just to get this over with. I don't even care about the grade, but just so that we get something done. It can go from that to Adolf Hitler. It can be a very those are two very starkly different things, and it can be everything in between, from politicians to high school sports coaches to concert masters of an orchestra. It always applies in that same form, and that's why because your definition, I think, is a really good way of broadening it, because that includes those high school students and Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, what it lacks is the nuances of what makes those two different.
Yeah. Well, the reason I kind of came up with this definition was I think a lot of people who aspire to be leaders and want to really think they have something to offer in terms of leadership, they're not really sure what leadership really is, because that if it's not a question that people ask in interviews for things like this, it really should be, what does leadership mean to you?
Yeah, I have stood by it for several years, but my definition of leadership, or a leader, is someone who can bring out the potentials in people who didn't even know it was there.
Yeah.
Because yes, a leader can be someone who just orders people to tell what they can do, but I would call that more of a boss.
Yeah.
A leader is someone who's like, okay, Jimmy is really good with speaking. I'm going to put him in a position where he presents things. Tammy is really good with interpersonal things, so she's going to work solving conflicts and resolutions.
I think that ties really well back to what I sort of perceive the idea of leadership, and that would be getting the best out of everyone. Mm-hmm. That not only those that you're leading, but yourself as well.
Yeah, as a leader, you want to be as confident and as firm and as gentle as you need to be to help your team succeed. And real quick, just as a side note here, because it's difficult to differentiate between leader and the other group. It's hard to find a term for that. For the length of this video, I like to use the word team.
Okay.
I think is the most least biased version.
Yes, because at a leadership meeting that we both had, I made the mistake of using the term subordinate, mm-hmm. which I got lambasted up and down for.
Yeah, even though you didn't mean any kind of higher or lower.
I didn't mean it in a condescending way. Frankly, I wanted to use a big word in my presentation.
I mean, it was a good big word. I'll give you that. But yeah, just for the duration of this episode, I think it's best just to use that and define that. And to keep consistency for the listener.
Yeah. And team can encompass anything, not just what you would typically think of as a team.
Yeah, your team could be the boss of a company and their workers. A team could be a section leader and their fellow musicians at the same level, technically. A team could be the president and his advisors. I think it's a much broader way of doing it.
Mm-hmm. So I guess now we should go to what you have. I don't have too much this week. I feel like I had more to contribute last week, mm-hmm. but you, especially you, I really admire you as a leader in a lot of ways, and hopefully you've got some good stuff for us today.
Thank you. I hope I hold up to your expectations. So first of all, I just want to, I like to work on a lot of questions, so I wrote down what a leader should be, or what should a leader be. And to read my list, I had a leader should be patient, wise, understanding, firm when necessary, confident in the capabilities of their team, kind, and dare I say paternal. And it helps to be well-spoken, intelligent, and just mm-hmm. other qualities that improve your own self. But the big thing you'll notice in every adjective I listed, they're all about interaction. So patience is patience in solving issues within your team and giving them time to figure things out and learn how to do things that you're trying to teach that you might be struggling with. Wisdom is the ability to share that knowledge you have and demonstrate it. Understanding is knowing about the team members and how you can help them best. Firm when necessary is I feel is pretty straightforward in that you can't be a gentle giant, but you can't be a monster. You have to have that firmness when it's necessary. Confidence in the capabilities of your team. That, again, is, we talked about that already, in that it's, if you're not confident in your team, they won't be at all. They never will be. Kindness, again, just to be kind. And I use the word paternal as a kind of a small afterthought, in that you're kind of like an ideal mother or father, in that you want to share your wisdom in a kind but firm way and help your children, in quotes, grow to the best people they can be.
Yeah, you see that one, at least in our band. People always refer to themselves as the children of their section leader, and it gets really weird sometimes.
It does get a little weird.
But on a surface level, it kind of makes sense in that way. And also, I like what you said about confidence, because if you as the leader don't have the faith that your team can succeed, then there's no reason that any of them are going to be able to do that.
Yeah, and are you done?
Yeah, I was going to keep going. And I see this a lot right now with obviously a lot of sports and band activities are canceled, but we were really going to stress that that the current situation wasn't going to get in the way of what we were trying to accomplish. And ultimately it did, but we were prepared to go in with the confidence that we were going to make it happen no matter what.
Yeah, and confidence comes in both what you say, what you do, and the way you portray yourself, especially. For someone like myself, where it's in the band world and you don't get the opportunity, you're doing much more of the team members looking at you rather than speaking to them. So it's a lot of, I can't do the visual because it's a podcast, but it's a lot of, like, if you're standing there with your shoulders slacked and you're kind of sitting back, your team is, one, not going to be engaged, but two, they're not going to be confident in you. And if they're not confident in you, it will fail, absolutely. But if you're standing there with a firm posture and a confident look on your face with intention, they will see that and realize he's there for business. And he trusts us.
Yeah.
And I feel more often than not, the trope runs that when you have a boss or some kind of superior, it's that you have to trust them entirely and they don't have to regard you at all. This could be no farther from the truth.
Absolutely.
Trust, which we probably should do as an episode itself, is a two-way street that's always running, constantly, with a subway and bike lanes all the time. And that you need, as a leader, you need to trust your team to do what's right, and your team needs to trust you to guide them as best you can.
I would say a word that goes right along with trust is respect, in that your team, you're not going to accomplish anything if you don't earn the respect of your team, and likewise you have to be willing to respect them as both a team and individuals, or that trust will be broken.
Absolutely. And I wrote some stuff here about trust, and or respect rather, and I found it in my writing, it was a very difficult dilemma to unpack, in that obviously you want the leader to respect the team and you want the team to respect the leader. As always, you want that nice circle of life, if you will. But in some cases, I would say that the team doesn't... And okay, so this is where it's incredibly important to define what we mean by trust, because if trust is believing that someone has capability to lead you, then I will use it a different way than if trust means they fundamentally accept you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And the reason I bring this up is because I want to use the example of, like, in some cases, the team doesn't need to trust the leader. Sometimes the team just needs to listen. And it's a firm thing.
Well, I would say that is trust, because even if you don't know exactly the the intentions there, you trust that there is a good reason for why you're being told to do this.
Precisely, because that's why it's really difficult to unpack that definition on that such a minute level.
It's like when a parent says, "Because I said so," or something like that.
Worst comeback ever. If I'm ever a parent, I want to have firm rhetorical arguments with my children.
Oh Lord.
Not these because I said so or because I'm the parent. But
I would
even in that case,
I guess I'd want to make it so. I'd want to make my arguments with my children so bulletproof that they would never even want to ask why.
yeah,
You don't even need to say "because I said so," because they know. And sorry, this is getting way off track here, but
even still, in such a situation like that, it is kind of a like, I don't want to do this, but fine, I'll trust you and I'll trust your judgment. It's really hard to unpack. I hate it.
yeah, because on one hand, last week we said don't just respect your elders because they're old, but on the other hand, you should trust people with that maturity and that experience, because sometimes they might know better than you what's good for you.
Yeah, and actually, that's a good point. That's why last time I talked about you trust or you respect an elder or someone because of their experiences, virtues, blah, 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 all that stuff. The important one here being experiences. In that, like, while you may not see that as the truth, those experiences help their credibility there.
So I think for most people, if you have a healthy relationship with your family and those that are older than you in your life, I think it's good to give them the benefit of the doubt when they're giving you advice and telling you what to do. And that can be why it's so challenging for people that don't have mature people to look up to in their life, because they might listen to these people when they're young and give them the benefit of the doubt, and then that doesn't lead to good things, and then later on they can't put that trust into other people that might know better.
I had something, it's gone now.
Oh.
It might come back. Well, hopefully it'll come back.
I guess the next thing, because you listed all those traits and things that are important for a leader, my next question would be, does anyone have the capability to become a leader?
Absolutely. There are definitely people who are more prone to it. These being people who, well, there are people who are more prone to that, but I definitely feel that anyone can become a leader if necessary. And the reason I stopped there was because the only reason those people are more prone to it is because they've done more introspective thought. Because, as always, if you don't know about yourself, you can't lead others.
Absolutely.
I will argue it is a fundamental clause of life. And, yes.
So in other words, maybe people are born with like a certain proclivity for speaking, or they just have like a bigger presence, in other words, and those are things that we would traditionally identify with leaders. But those aren't the most important thing when being a leader.
Yeah, and to clarify, I don't want to... So, a purpose of this episode is to help those listeners, or you listeners? I don't know how to address it. How does that work? Anyways.
You people.
Y'all. The goal of this episode is to help y'all figure out how to identify the people in the world that are pedestaled as leaders, and identify which ones are and which ones should not be. And I'm going to avoid any kind of political discourse here, but I think that's the most important place for it, and we'll talk about this in a coming episode.
I'm not going to avoid the
Oh, boy.
political.
We have
The best people don't go into politics, and that's why we have so many bad leaders.
Amen. But we'll do this in an episode coming up where we discuss a couple books. But so more often than not, a lot of these very loud and eccentric leaders are just good television actors.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily always actors, for better or for worse, but they're much more appealing to watch on TV.
Yeah.
And it's a portion of a topic of immediacy, which is something we're going to have a long discussion about.
Absolutely.
Involving 2 whole books, which we might assign as homework. So we'll see. But the point, I don't know, that was a huge tangent. But the point stands that the purpose of this is to help y'all identify those people and respect those who have those qualities more.
Mm-hmm.
And allow you to, because more often than not, it does come down to a lesser of the 2 evils and which one is more tolerable. And ideally, we want a situation resulting from this discussion in which people can identify those whom they should respect.
Okay, I had I guess you could say, a different view on what this episode was about. This is why you should discuss beforehand. But I thought it would be more about how to become a leader, how to more effectively be a leader, and not as much identifying others.
Well, I mean, I think the way to identify is to learn how to be one.
Okay. So we're not completely disconnected here.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of a disinterest, not disinterest, but a little bit of a diversion, but I feel it's still very related.
So the question I would have there is, is there anything people can do just normally to become more of a leader, or do you just kind of have to be thrown into it and then you develop those skills?
It would really depend on the kind of person. Personally, I would always start with the introspective side of it. That was when I first stepped into some leadership positions. That was the most difficult thing to deal with, was people not necessarily disrespecting me, but just addressing me in ways that I wasn't sure of how to react to,
Mm-hmm.
Positive and negative lights. And it was really crucial for me to do a lot of contemplation, if you will, about how I want to think. And as s'mores, actually, s'mores, that sounds good. But for some people, it is the case of just throw them in and see what happens. Because for some people, it's about just the opportunity. They might already have that proclivity for interest and leadership and helping others. Or it might be they have an interest in power.
Yeah.
That's the main reason why I stress the introspective first, because there's a difference between wanting to be a leader and knowing why you want to be a leader.
Absolutely.
I won't lie, I first wanted to be our drum major at our school because I thought conducting was awesome, and I still think it is. But over the past 2 years, I've developed a significantly higher appreciation for I'm getting to help these people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting to develop them and show them, use my skills to help them develop.
I think with myself too, my ego sort of was the initial reason that I wanted to learn to become a leader, and that was fine up to the point where I actually had to start leading people, where and in that case, a motivation like that falls apart very quickly because you realize that's not productive for anyone outside of yourself, and not even for yourself, really.
Yeah, if you're entirely a leader because of your ego and wanting to just be this power, this source of glory and power and a god, if you will, as soon as you start leading people, no one will respect you, no one will listen to you, and no one will be your friend.
Mm-hmm.
Why should they? I don't know a reason why. And I would argue you could get away with a leader who's egotistical, but egotistical in the sense of, I want to do this with the band.
Yeah.
or this with the program. We use band because we're so familiar. And that works in that it gives the group a goal that they're working towards, but it's even still, it's about, I want this goal.
Yeah.
Instead of we're working together.
So you could be maybe egotistical on behalf of your team. Like you really believe that we can achieve great things, and you try and demonstrate that to everyone around you, rather than just being a leader because I can do this, I want power, I want to lead.
Yeah, because another visual goal of the leader is portraying the goals and the intents of the ensemble. If the leader is a jerk who every time they get every single award does a snarky salute and laughs, that's what we all assume the band to be like. If the leader is someone who respectfully shakes the award presenter's hand and then does a simple salute, it's much more, you take that and you take that and look at the band, you're like, oh, they must be a more respectable and quiet band. Okay, that's fine. It really, as always, especially with leadership, it's about presentation, to quote Megamind. And I like to break it down into action, presentation, and virtue. All of your actions will be witnessed by the team you're working with. All of your your appearance and the way you present yourself, aside from your actions, will be always on watch by your team and criticized by a lot of them, and in addition to other teams. And all of your virtues, while less conspicuous, can be criticized if you let them out. That's why whenever I try to lead and portray myself in the world, I try to hide a lot of that as much as possible, aside from just the general ones of like being patient and being kind, because those are more acceptable. But the more specific ones, such as religious belief or thoughts on, I'm not going to say those, but thoughts on
Political issues
and mildly controversial things.
Yeah.
You want to avoid those as much as possible, because like with this podcast, is if we dared getting into that, it would be a maelstrom of death. Anyways.
I don't think you could have described the topic of leading by example more perfectly without flat out saying that, because that's really, I guess, what that tangent you just took was. And I think that leads brilliantly into the next topic, which is the concept of different types of leadership. Because I've heard a lot of like the importance of leading by example as opposed to telling people what to do. And I think there is validity to different forms of leadership being effective for different situations. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on.
Yeah, I was just kind of taking a couple notes down here. The type of leader you are really depends on your position and how you interact with others. So if you are the top, well, no, we'll start at the other end.
I know where you're going with this.
Yeah. If you are at the bottom of the chain of command and you're just the first level of leadership, so this would be in the band, it might be a section leader, or could even just be a upperclassman of the group that doesn't have a section leader. This person is usually someone who is a friend and a mentor. I wouldn't say this person is very firm, which isn't a bad thing, because at this level it's not about giving instructions, it's about helping.
Okay, so these would be the people that almost exclusively lead by example, and in other ways could be that a friend. That is the best way to describe it. Because
someone like a section leader wouldn't have very many opportunities to give a speech to the entire band, or just address more than their section usually. So it's much more about the home-based stuff.
Leading individuals.
And this is incredibly important. I've had several section leaders who I've been very fond of friends. One was a girl named Kelsey, and I think the entire band regards her as the mother because she is the kindest.
Back to the maternal paternal.
Yeah, she's a kind, gentle woman who is a kick-ass saxophone player and is quiet about it. She's a wonderful mentor too, and that's a great thing to do. But she doesn't bark orders.
Yeah.
She doesn't give instructions. She just helps when she needs to.
But everyone respects her because of those traits.
Absolutely. And then moving a step higher would be someone that kind of oversees greater groups. This could be a like a.
In our case, we have.
So in our own band, we have what are called we have woodwind and brass section leaders. So they're more general categories covering 30, 40 people.
Yeah.
These people in our program, they don't do a lot yet, but the idea would be that they can give orders if necessary, but their goal is still mostly just that leading by example and just being that section leader to a lot more people. Basically getting a wider reach. And then from a step higher...
I would, just to interject really quick, I would think that that level would almost be being that mentor to the lower level of leaders and helping them to lead their own sections to go along with the band example.
Yeah, and this is something we're going to come back to because I just wrote it down, so hopefully we'll come back to it. But moving up a step higher in our program, you have the drum majors who their goal is they can address the band in a way that is still as a friend and still as a partner in crime that you're working together to this team. So at this point, it's more firm in instruction that we can give orders in a weird definition, to put it that way. But at the same time, we give speeches to the entire ensemble, and we try to be as charismatic and as friendly to as many people as possible. This is where it really becomes this is for us the last stage before it enters the adult directors section, and this is where the shift happens. Is as drum majors, as larger section leaders, and as section leaders, all these people can affect students directly on a personal level.
Yeah.
As soon as you get to the band directors, the assistant directors, the instructors, and then the director, they don't address us directly. They don't talk about our feelings. They don't usually. And they're there mostly as instruction.
Yeah. And those are the people that you would trust. You would always trust even if you don't know exactly why.
Yeah, and so the best way of looking at this, you can kind of look at this chain of command as it is, and you'll see that respect goes up as you go up it. Firmness and instruction goes up as you go up it. And familiarity and friendship goes the opposite direction. So those at the bottom levels and into the middle have the best connections. And this is why I wanted to really delve into, like, what does it mean to be a different kind of leader? Because as you can see here, there's so many kinds.
Absolutely.
And they all do different things. And it's cool. And especially when they work together, you get some really cool things. You mentioned how the upper section leaders discuss and teach the, I hate using the word lower, but for purpose of argument, the lower section leaders, this is the same, all the way up the chain of command. The upper section leaders teach the lowers teach the youngest members, the drum majors teach the upper section members and the section leaders,
and then the
director teaches directly to the drum majors, and then everyone else in addition.
In terms of personal relationships, the drum majors are really the people that have the most connection with the directors because they're so directly involved, and they are allowed to make some decisions.
Absolutely, yeah. There many times I've been given the opportunity to make choices, some poorly, but you learn. And I liked that you brought that up because it is a lot of people look at here like here's what a leader should be, all these qualities, and yes, they should be those, but you as a leader is something no one can tell you exactly what it is. It really, like, even in the when at a wedding when someone's giving a toast and they're talking about how great of a leader their best man is or something, even that, they can't truly express every single quality about that person, no matter the vocabulary, no matter how long they go for.
Yeah.
Some of those are long speeches, but as always, you can really never understand what your leaders are to the core. You as yourself might be able to understand your own thoughts and your own psyche, but it really is a battle of knowing as much about your leaders and why you should respect and trust them.
I think that pretty accurately wraps up that subtopic there. I guess the next, it's kind of a minor, or I'll let you draw your own conclusion on how important it is, but the concept of body language in leaders, you touched on it a bit earlier with like standing up straight.
Yeah.
And a lot of that, like, even on a psychological level, like presenting yourself like that and standing up straight not only makes others respect you, but it increases your serotonin levels, and it can, even if you don't internally feel like a leader, it can sort of set you in that mindset. And you should elaborate on that.
So there's two things here. So first of all, like you were talking about, there is the intentionality of presenting yourself in a manner, and in addition to just being great for your health and just making yourself feel better, which everyone should do because it's awesome, it's a drug. The smallest details, he's flexing on me right now, you can't see it, but it's terrifying. The smallest details are ever so incredibly important. Because yes, having great posture when you're standing in front of the band, working together and teaching them and leading them, yes, that is, you have to make a conscious decision to do that. But even as a section leader on the field, if your posture is suffering, or if your attitude is suffering, or if your general expressions aren't as lively perhaps, or they're different from what you normally are, it forces you into this corner of like, they're not portraying someone who is enjoying it usually.
Yeah.
And it doesn't look like all the section members will look at that and question why you are the leader.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
It's a very roundabout way.
It kind of goes back to confidence. Like, if you don't portray yourself in that way, then you're effectively saying, I'm not, one, either confident in this, two, I'm not enjoying this and I don't think it's valuable, or three, I don't respect those around me enough to take this seriously. And I think those are some of the most important aspects of why you have to present yourself in that way. And it goes beyond just posture. Like, I would argue, I know it's like sort of taboo these days to tell people to smile, but it does psychologically make you enjoy what you're doing more.
Absolutely. Yeah. And here I'd like to add one of the important discussions we had as a drum major team was about the notion of two faces and two identities, because in some cases it is important to be the same person when you're leading, and in some cases it's important to be a different person. So sometimes on a more lighthearted day, it's better just to be the friend on the podium. It's better just to be the father, if you will, in the guidance and helping as a team kind of thing, and leading your team that way. But on other days, you have to put on a serious business face. And this connects to, like, some days you have to be significantly more firm with your team.
Absolutely.
To get things done if necessary. And that was a really hard concept for me to grasp and I still don't think I've developed it in a way that is successful. I'm very much the former face a lot of the time, and I don't have a lot of the firmness to my voice, or unless I'm extremely angry, and then I can be. You people say you don't like me when you're angry. No, you don't like me when I'm angry, and that especially actually to kind of go on a tangent there. That's interesting because the people I'm most scared of getting yelled at by are those not who could physically harm me or could yell the loudest, but those I respect the most.
Yeah.
Our band director, he's a teddy bear. I love him. Everyone loves him. He smells like cookies. I'm pretty sure he's Santa Claus. But he's not very firm very often unless he needs to be. And the few times he's yelled at our ensemble for just being terrible some days, I feel worse when he yells at me than someone I know already is firm.
Yeah.
It's a really odd notion, but it makes a lot of sense when you experience it.
Mm-hmm. I would say, not to butter you up anymore, but
Butter me up.
I would say that I'm almost more disappointed in myself when, if you were to say, like, if you were to get angry with me or something, than almost anyone else because of how much I respect you.
Yeah.
And that goes the same with the adults in my life.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to be an absolutely evil leader, you can demonstrate to your team how much you know they can do this, and you know all their capabilities, and then tell them you're disappointed in them.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very evil thing to do, because you might be very, very disappointed in them if they do very poorly, and that has happened with our program in cases where we get distracted and we lose a lot of that potential. And in that case, it's like, why did you do that? Like, why did you waste your own time? Your leader looks at you and they think, what the heck is going on? I know what you guys can do.
Yeah.
Why are we not thinking right now?
When you said evil, what did you mean by that? Like,
Malicious.
Who's being the evil person in this example?
The leader is being, yeah.
Because they're disappointed?
In the way that they express it.
Okay.
Because I will be honest, I've been disappointed with people whom I've led. Not you, you're great all the time. But it's something, unless you need to express it to get them to work, you don't want to show that.
Okay.
That's why, like, when there's a 6th grade band director and he's working with his students and they honk out this horrendous noise, they go, "Sounds great." They don't say, "Man, I know you can do better." They don't say that because in addition to making them hate life and leave the program, it's just rude in a weird way.
That's interesting because I would argue, at least with high school and up, you kind of need that sometimes to know that someone's disappointed with you. And maybe they don't need to express that in such a harsh way, but I think it's necessary, especially for if someone doesn't have the self-discipline to be disappointed in themselves. I think they should at least know that they're not what they could be, and it's a leader's job to make them try harder next time, for lack of a better term.
Did we talk about Mr. Williams in our first episode?
I know we have before.
Did we do this story?
We did, but I think I might know where you're going with this.
So, for those of you who might not remember, in the story, our teacher, the first day of our APUS class, our teacher, Mr. Williams, comes in and practically shouts at us. Well, no, he did shout at us and was borderline verbally abusive with us without using any kind of direct insult, if you will. But the reason I respect him more as an individual is because he demonstrated how high his expectations were for us. And I feel that, like, you can have those teachers who are there and just talk about, like, yeah, you can do so well. But I feel like him expressing it so vulgarly,
bluntly,
yeah, we'll go with bluntly. It demonstrated how important it was to him.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's why we talked before. It was like, that's why we respect him more than anyone else.
Yeah, I kind of have a personal example here, because one time one time he talked to us individually about an essay we did, and I remember very vividly, I went over there, he said, this would be acceptable if you were not an AP student.
Yeah, it's...
And he said, I know you can do better, and I expect you to do better next time, or you will fail.
Yeah,
basically.
And I mean, that's where it comes into the case-by-case basis of, like, how much... When do you need to be that firm, and when do you need to be, oh, fine, whatever. But in that case, it was because he knew you could do better, and he knew you wanted to do better.
Mm-hmm.
So he showed that.
Yeah.
And him saying that he knows you can do better does demonstrate that trust in you and that want for you to be better as well. And I would say that's different from someone just flat out being disappointed.
Okay.
And just shouting for the sake of being disappointed.
Okay.
Because then it's not constructive, it's just about being angry. And being angry is never helpful.
Mm-hmm. I think it all comes back full circle to what I said at the beginning. A very simplified definition of leadership would be getting the best out of those you're leading. And I think this goes along with that, with you really have to be willing to express that you know that they can do better while doing it in a productive way that isn't tyrannical almost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's why we brought up Mr. Williams as this phenomenal leader, because he showed that so vigorously and so well. And that's something I'll cherish forever as memories, I suppose now. But something I'll look back on and hope to learn from. And I think it'd be fun to have him here as a guest at some point.
That would be excellent.
That's totally radical. Dude. So, right, just to... and that was a great sentence. Before we move on, I'd just like to take a moment to thank our sponsors, Literally Nobody. Literally Nobody is a wonderful platform that provides absolutely nothing to us, and they are so wonderful in everything they do, and I would absolutely recommend them. Make sure you go over to their website, literallynobody.com, and type in the code NO. And if you haven't already, make sure you like and subscribe. It helps to have the views, and it helps to have the reassurance that people actually care.
Yeah.
So yeah. And always remember to tune in live, 1 o'clock on Tuesdays, for now.
Mm-hmm. Have we decided if we're skipping next week, or...
Have we?
I don't know, because we have somewhat of a more complex episode planned coming up, because we each have to read 2 books to make this one happen, and I think it will definitely be worth it, but we discussed maybe pushing it back a week in order to give us more time to prepare. So what did you think of that?
I think so, and we might just do 1 book.
1 book?
Well, we'll see.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's plan on that. We'll come back 2 weeks from now, Tuesday is that the 25th? Let's find out. Calendar. Oh, that's the 25th. So, first of all, that one will be weird. We'll have to talk about the time for that one. But Tuesday the 25th will be our next episode sometime, because we'll have a larger conflict that day. So we'll see. But do you have anything else to add, or any questions from the chat?
I don't believe there were any questions at any time. There were not. So...
Scaredy cats.
As you can see now, our official logo, I guess you could say, is on screen, and I would like to thank my good friend, I guess I will just call him Nicholas, it's
Mr. Nicholas to you.
for creating this logo that I think does a really good job showing what we are. There's a lot going on there, but
there's a lot going on here.
But it's simple and modern.
Ah, yes, contemporary design.
It can mean whatever you want it to mean.
Amen.
Just like Existential. As well as my partner here, Andrew, for that lovely music you guys heard prior to the start of the podcast.
Oh, thanks, bro. Or wait, no, thanks, dude. That's what we'll do.
Dude, yeah.
That's better.
And I suppose with that, we have reached our conclusion for this 4th episode.
Thank you again, always, for listening to the Two Existential Dudes podcast. Tune in 2 weeks from now. Sometime, we'll find out.
Yep.
And keep listening, because we have some good stuff planned.
Mm-hmm. I am Luke.
And I'm Andrew.
Goodbye.